Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Cole had always been the kind of man who believed in family. At 29, he worked hard every day, woke up early, came home thinking about the dinner he'd share with Amber, his wife of 3 years. They'd met in college, and their relationship had blossomed quickly. Cole remembered how Amber used to laugh at his dumbest jokes, how her eyes lit up whenever he talked about the future they'd planned together. Marrying her had felt like the most natural decision in the world. Their life was simple but comfortable. They lived in a 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood, with a small backyard where Cole planned to build a deck during his next vacation. Amber worked part-time and spent most of her days at home, handling household chores and scrolling through social media. Cole never questioned her routine. Trust was the foundation of their relationship, or at least that's what he believed. Everything started changing about 2 months ago, when Amber began obsessively insisting they needed to replace their bed. The one they had was perfectly fine, a queen-size bed Cole had bought right after their wedding. But Amber wouldn't let up. She complained about waking up with back pain, needing more space, saying their current bed was too old. Cole tried reasoning that they could just replace the mattress first and see if that fixed the problem, but Amber was firm. She wanted a king-size bed, and she wanted it right away. Cole gave in. He always did when Amber pushed hard enough for something. He figured maybe she really was uncomfortable, and that as her husband, he should do whatever he could to make her feel better. They went to the store together and picked out a huge, modern bed with an upholstered headboard. Amber was radiant that day, grinning from ear to ear as she tested out mattresses. Cole paid in full, proud he could give her that. The bed was delivered and assembled on a Friday. Cole took the day off work to supervise the setup. The delivery guys took 3 hours to put it all together, and when they were done, the bedroom looked different. The bed dominated the room, imposing yet inviting. As soon as the men left, Amber jumped onto it, laughing like a child. Cole lay down beside her, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. She kissed him, thanked him for the gift, and Cole felt certain he'd made the right choice. But in the weeks that followed, something started to bother Cole. Amber seemed distant. Nothing obvious, just small changes. She spent more time on her phone, always flipping the screen face down whenever he entered the room. She began locking the bedroom door during the day, saying she needed privacy to get ready or do yoga. Cole thought it was odd, but he didn't want to seem paranoid. Amber had always been independent, and he respected that. Then, about 3 weeks after the new bed was installed, Blake showed up. Cole was at work when he got a message from Amber saying her distant cousin had unexpectedly come into town. Blake, an amateur basketball player Cole had met only once, years ago, at a family wedding. Cole vaguely remembered him, nearly 6'8", athletic, with that laid-back attitude of someone who never worries too much. Amber explained that Blake was going through a rough time. He'd just ended a relationship and needed a place to stay for a few days. Cole didn't like the idea. Not because he suspected anything, but because he valued their privacy as a couple. The house wasn't big, and having a guest meant adjusting their routine. But Amber insisted. She said he was family, that it would only be temporary, no more than a week. Reluctantly, Cole agreed. After all, Amber rarely asked him for favors like this, and he didn't want to come across as insensitive. Blake moved into the guest room that same day. He was polite, greeted Cole whenever they crossed paths, but there was something in the way he looked at Amber that unsettled Cole. Nothing explicit, just a level of familiarity that seemed excessive. Cole tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just cousin dynamics, he thought. He himself was close with some of his cousins, and he knew family relationships could look intimate to an outsider. Days turned into weeks. Blake showed no signs of leaving. He always had an excuse. He was waiting to hear back about a job, needed to sort out some paperwork, had an interview scheduled for next week. Cole started getting irritated. Amber, however, seemed perfectly comfortable with the situation. She cooked for Blake, laughed with him over jokes Cole didn't understand, and spent hours chatting with him in the living room while Cole worked in his makeshift basement office. Cole began noticing other details. Amber started dressing up more, even on days when she had no plans. She wore perfumes he didn't recognize, and new clothes kept appearing in her closet without explanation. One morning, Cole woke up and realized Amber had changed the bed sheets midweek, something she'd never done before. When he asked why, she said she'd spilled coffee, but Cole didn't see any stain. Suspicion started to grow, but Cole fought against it. He didn't want to be the kind of man who doubted his own wife without cause. Amber had never shown signs of infidelity before. She'd always been affectionate, present, and devoted. But now, something was off. Cole felt it in his gut, an intuition he couldn't ignore. It all fell apart on a Thursday. Cole had an important morning meeting, but the client cancelled last minute. Instead of going into the office, he decided to head home. It was nearly 10 a.m. when he pulled into the garage. The house was quiet. He came in through the kitchen door, took off his shoes, and headed toward the bedroom to change clothes. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Cole heard a low murmur and stopped. His heart started racing. He gently pushed the door open, and what he saw made him feel like the floor had dropped out from under him. Amber was in bed. The king-size bed he'd bought, the one she'd insisted on so strongly. And with her was Blake. They were tangled together, half-dressed, the sheets rumpled around them. Blake's massive frame took up most of the bed, and Amber's head rested on his chest, laughing at something he'd just said. Cole froze. His brain refused to process the scene. For a split second, he thought maybe he was mistaken, that there had to be an innocent explanation. But then Amber turned and saw him. Her eyes widened, and she sat up abruptly, yanking the sheet over herself. Blake turned too, and when he saw Cole, his expression turned almost indifferent, as if he'd been caught doing something mildly inappropriate, not something devastating. Cole didn't yell. He couldn't. His voice came out low, trembling, heavy with a pain he'd never felt before. "How long?" Amber didn't answer. She just stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, but Cole felt no pity. Blake stood up and started putting on his shirt with infuriating calm. "How long, Amber?" Cole repeated, louder this time. She swallowed hard. "Cole, Answer me." "Since he got here," she whispered. Something inside Cole shattered. 3 weeks. Blake had been in their house for 3 weeks, and all that time, while Cole worked, trusted, paid the bills, Amber had been cheating on him with her cousin, in the bed he'd bought specifically because she'd asked for it. And then it hit him like a punch to the gut, the bed. Amber had insisted on getting the bigger bed a full month before Blake ever showed up. That wasn't a coincidence. "You planned this," Cole said, his voice now filled with cold anger. "The bed. You knew he was coming." Amber didn't deny it. Tears streamed down her face, but she stayed silent. Blake finally spoke, his deep voice casual and unconcerned. "Man, look, I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd walk in like this." Cole turned to him, and for the first time in his life, felt pure hatred. "Get out of my house. Now." Blake hesitated, glancing at Amber as if expecting her to step in, but she just lowered her head. He gathered his things and left the room without another word. Minutes later, Cole heard the front door slam shut. Amber tried to approach him. "Cole, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" Cole cut her off. "That you cheated on me with your cousin? That you brought him into our home? That you planned this weeks in advance?" "It wasn't planned like that," Amber pleaded. "Blake and we have history." Cole frowned. "History?" Amber took a deep breath. "We hooked up before. Years ago. Before I met you." "And?" And, during our engagement, I ran into him again. Just once, Cole, I swear. But. Cole felt the room spin. During our engagement? Amber nodded, tears streaming down her face. I got pregnant then, Cole. Remember? I lost the baby. Cole remembered. Amber had suffered a miscarriage months before their wedding. It had been a terrible time, and Cole had stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand, comforting her, telling her they'd try again when she was ready. And now she was saying. That baby, Cole said slowly, was Blake's? Amber didn't answer, but her silence said everything. Cole walked out of the room. He needed air. He needed to think. He went downstairs, passed through the living room where Blake and Amber had laughed together so many times, and stepped out into the backyard. He sat on the porch step and buried his face in his hands. The betrayal alone was devastating enough. But learning that Amber had cheated on him during their engagement, that she'd lied about the pregnancy, that she'd planned to bring Blake back into their lives, that was too much. Cole realized he'd never truly known the woman he married. He came back inside hours later, his mind clearer. Amber was sitting on the couch, still crying. Cole walked right past her and went straight to the office. He called a divorce attorney a colleague had recommended years ago and scheduled a consultation for the next day. Then he did something he never imagined he'd do. He pulled out his phone and started researching trespassing laws. Blake had been invited by Amber, but the house was in Cole's name. Technically, Cole had never authorized Blake's stay. And now Blake had committed adultery on Cole's property. There was a legal angle there. It might not lead to much, but Cole wanted Blake to face consequences too. In the days that followed, Cole moved with a determination that surprised even himself. He hired the attorney, filed for divorce, and sued Blake for trespassing and disturbing the peace. His lawyer said it was a risky move, but Cole didn't care. He wanted both of them to pay for what they'd done. Amber tried talking to him several times. She begged for forgiveness, said she'd made a terrible mistake, that she loved Cole. But he couldn't believe her anymore. Every word from her mouth sounded like a lie. He moved into the guest room and avoided being in the same room as her whenever possible. News of the affair spread quickly. Amber's family was shocked when they found out. Her mother called Cole to apologize, saying she couldn't understand how her daughter had gotten to this point. When Blake's parents learned what happened, they were furious. Blake was kicked out of his family's house, and his relationship with his uncles was severely damaged. The divorce process was swift and brutal. Amber didn't contest anything. She knew she had no ground to stand on. Cole kept the house and most of their assets. Amber left with just the essentials and moved back in with her parents in another city. Surprisingly, Blake faced legal consequences too. The trespassing lawsuit didn't land him in jail, but he was forced to pay a significant fine and got a mark on his criminal record. His reputation in the local basketball community was ruined. Players who once respected him now avoided him. 3 months after the discovery, Cole sat in the backyard on a Saturday morning, sipping coffee. The house was quiet, quieter than ever. He'd sold the king-size bed in the first week, replacing it with a simple one just for himself. The bedroom felt bigger now, emptier, but also cleaner. No bad memories poisoning the space. Cole didn't pretend he was okay. There were nights when he woke up alone and felt the weight of loneliness. But there was also a sense of relief. The lie had been exposed. The charade was over. He was no longer living in an illusion. One day, while walking through the town square, Cole saw Amber. She was sitting alone on a bench, staring into nothing. She looked smaller, frilier than he remembered. Her eyes were puffy, and she wore simple clothes without the vanity she used to carry. For a moment, Cole considered turning around, avoiding her completely. But something made him stop. He walked over, and Amber looked up, surprised. "Cole," she said, her voice weak. He just nodded. They stood in silence for a few seconds, the weight of everything that had happened hanging between them. "I wanted to apologize again," Amber finally said. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm really sorry." Cole took a deep breath. "You destroyed what we had, Amber. Not just now. From the beginning, you lied to me about Blake, about the baby, about everything." "I know," she whispered. "I was cowardly. I didn't have the courage to be honest when I should have been." Cole looked at her, and for the first time since the discovery, he didn't feel anger, just deep sadness. "I hope you learn from this. That you never do this to someone else." Amber nodded, tears starting to fall again. "And you? Are you okay?" Cole thought about the question. Was he okay? Not entirely. But he was better than he'd been 3 months ago, living a lie without even knowing it. "I'm surviving," he said. "And that's enough for now." He turned and started walking away. Amber didn't call after him, and he didn't look back. There was something freeing about leaving her there on that bench, alone with her own mistakes and regrets. In the months that followed, Cole began rebuilding his life. He picked up old hobbies he'd abandoned, started spending more time with friends, and even considered the possibility of meeting someone new, eventually. He wasn't in a rush. What happened with Amber had taught him the importance of truly knowing someone before giving them your trust. Blake, on the other hand, disappeared from the area. Cole heard through a mutual acquaintance that he'd moved to another part of the country, trying to start over far from the scandal. Cole didn't care. Blake was a closed chapter, just like Amber. The house that once felt full of painful memories began to change. Cole renovated the backyard and finally built the deck he'd planned. He painted the walls new colors, replaced furniture, and made the space truly his own. Each change was a step toward healing. One night, as he sat on the new deck looking up at the stars, Cole thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the anger, the legal battle, and finally, the acceptance. He didn't thank Amber for what she'd done. He never would. But he recognized that, in some twisted way, it had forced him to face truths he might have ignored indefinitely. He'd trusted blindly, and that almost destroyed him. But now he knew that trust had to be earned, not just given. And the people who truly mattered would never ask him to ignore obvious red flags. Cole took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. He was alone, but not lonely. He was free, and that freedom, though gained through pain, was worth more than any comfortable lie. And as the world kept turning, Cole gave himself permission to start over, not rushed, not desperate, but aware. He'd survived the worst, and somehow, that made him stronger than ever. Life hadn't ended that Thursday morning in that bedroom. In a way, it had just begun again. And Cole was ready to live this new version of himself, one who wouldn't settle for crumbs of affection disguised as real love. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.